welcome to the deep dive. You're here because, well, you want to understand why, despite all the talk, so many digital strategies just aren't quite hitting the mark. Think of this as your shortcut to really getting a grip on why these initiatives often stumble.
Exactly. Our mission today is to unpack the core reasons behind these failures. We'll be drawing heavily on insights from a really compelling article called Why Digital Strategies Fail.
Right, by Jacques Pizon,
Yeah.
Tanguy Catlin, and a couple of others.
Yes, Martin Hurt and Paul Wilmot. We're aiming to give you those, aha moments that hopefully cut through some of the noise.
It really is incredible when you stop and think about the speed of change. I mean, the smartphone in your hand, it packs way more punch than the computers that guided Apollo 11 to the moon.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it?
And those devices, they've fundamentally changed almost everything, how we find our way around, how we travel, how we talk to each other, even how we handle our money.
Absolutely. But then you look at many businesses and it feels like the digital transformation.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of stalled halfway.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's really the central issue the article gets at. Too many companies seem to be treating digital as like a separate project.
Or like an IT thing or maybe marketing.
Right. A side strategy.
Hmm.
Instead of recognizing these profound economic and industry shifts that are actually happening, the authors highlight this really concerning statistic too.
Okay.
Only 8% of the companies they surveyed believe their current business model will actually remain viable.
Wow.
Yeah, at the current pace of digitization, just 8%.
Only 8%. That really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
It does.
So what are the key reasons for this disconnect then? The article points to 5 critical pitfalls that companies seem to consistently fall into.
That's right. And we're going to break each one down for you. Let's start with the first one, fuzzy definitions.
Okay, fuzzy definitions. Let's unpack this. When we say digital, what are we actually talking about? The article points out, like you said, for some it's just IT. For others, maybe it's social media or online sales. But often there's this real lack of a clear sort of holistic understanding.
Exactly. They miss the bigger picture. Think of digital not just as a department, but as this potential for, well, almost instant free and perfect connections.
A force that can fundamentally rewire your whole business.
Precisely. And the authors give a powerful definition for it. Digital is the nearly instant, free, and flawless ability to connect people, devices, and physical objects anywhere.
Anywhere. And the scale is just huge.
It's staggering. By 2025, they project something like 20 billion connected devices.
20 billion. And here's a fact that just blew my mind. 90% of all the data ever produced was generated in just the last couple of years from these devices.
It's an absolute explosion of information. Unprecedented.
So what does that mean for business?
Well, that's where the potential lies. It's mining this data that unlocks so much. It turbocharges analytics. It leads to much greater automation.
And not just basic tasks. Right.
No, increasingly complex decision-making, too. And this fuels entirely new business models. Think about insurance and connected cars, for instance.
Right, yeah. Those cars are constantly sending back data, aren't they? Driving habits, location.
Exactly. Real-time information. It lets insurers assess risk with incredible accuracy, offer personalized, maybe pay-as-you-go policies.
And potentially cut out the middleman, like traditional agents.
Absolutely. It's a fundamental shift in how that whole industry can operate.
Okay, so if a company has this vague, fuzzy idea of digital, it struggles to really weave it into the core business.
Exactly. It ends up just reacting, putting out fires instead of actually driving the change.
And getting left behind.
Pretty much. As the article points out, that transformation we saw with the smartphone over the last decade, that should be a huge warning sign.
For everyone.
For every industry. They emphasize, no industry will remain untouched by this kind of power.
Okay, that's crystal clear. So, pitfall number 1. Get a precise, comprehensive understanding of digital. Don't be fuzzy. What's the second big misstep?
The second pitfall is really about misunderstanding the economics, specifically the new economics of the digital age.
Okay, this sounds important.
It is. Many long-held economic ideas are just clashing with the realities of digital competition.
Right. And here's where it gets, well, really interesting. The article argues that digital is destroying economic rent. Now, for anyone needing a quick refresher, economic rent is basically profit beyond what you need just to cover your costs, right? Your cost of capital.
Exactly. It's that extra cushion. And digital is making it much, much harder for companies to hang on to those extra profits.
So it's not about bigger profits for everyone.
Not at all. It's often about a massive transfer of value to customers and this ruthless efficiency that just squeezes traditional profit margins.
How does that work?
Well, on average, digital actually creates more value for customers than it does for the firms providing the stuff. It's a fundamental power shift.
Like digital lets you unbundle things. Customers get exactly what they want. It also makes a lot of intermediaries, think big box stores maybe,
You're right.
less essential.
Direct access.
Exactly. We now have almost endless choices, complete price transparency, and digital products. They can be copied and sent out almost instantly, for free, perfectly.
Which concentrates value somewhere else.
Yes, with the huge hyperscale players. And it just drives down prices everywhere else.
The impact sounds significant.
Oh, it's massive. The article states this erosion has already wiped out something like 40% of incumbents' revenue growth
40%.
and 25% of their earnings growth. Companies are either forced to cut prices to stay in the game or pour these vast sums into innovation just trying to catch up.
That's huge pressure.
It is. And the authors warn against getting fooled by sort of short-term metrics. A company might think it's doing okay because it's keeping pace with its old rivals.
While the whole ground is shifting underneath them.
Precisely. The entire economic foundation of their industry could be crumbling. Can you give us some concrete examples of this?
Sure, absolutely. Think about the travel industry. Remember travel agents?
Vaguely.
Airlines and hotels used to pay them commissions. The internet just blew that up completely.
Right. We can all book online now.
Exactly. Consumers access the same info, the booking services, for free anytime. Plus, you got recommendations from, everyone online. Those travel agent commissions, mostly gone.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a great illustration. What about another one?
Okay, how about enterprise hardware? Companies used to have to spend a fortune on their own servers, their own data centers.
Right, the big server rooms.
Yeah. Now, cloud services, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they let companies essentially rent that computing power.
Pay as you go.
Pretty much. It's often way cheaper, especially for smaller businesses. But it's definitely hit the traditional hardware makers hard.
So the core lesson here is customers win big time.
Customers are often the biggest winners, yes. And the value that's left. It often flows to companies in totally different sectors. So executives really need to face up to these shrinking profit pools.
Okay. And that ties into the second economic point you mentioned.
It does. It gets even more pronounced with the second economic reality the article highlights. Digital is driving winner-takes-all economics.
Well, winner takes all. Okay.
Yeah, scale and network effects are causing economic value to just concentrate at the very top. It's not being spread out evenly anymore.
Like social media, the more people using it, the more valuable it is for everyone.
Exactly that kind of effect. Look at Amazon's market cap compared to other retailers. It just dwarfs them.
Or the iPhone capturing, what, like 90% of smartphone profits?
Over 90% in some periods, yeah. The concentration of power is just undeniable.
So what does that mean for strategy?
It means if your strategy is basically just to maintain your current market share, relative to your peers, you're probably in trouble, unless you're already the number one player.
Because the winners pull further and further ahead.
Right. The article mentions McKinsey research on this power curve. It shows this widening gap between the top performers and everyone else. Digital revenue growth is actually negative for the bottom 3/4 of companies.
Negative. Wow.
While it's strongly positive for the top quarter, and the hit to earnings for those lagging behind, it's even worse, like double the negative impact compared to the top.
So for those companies at the top, the winners, they get this huge advantage from all the data.
Exactly. Their massive user base, the network affects it, gives them access to enormous amounts of customer data.
Which they can use to get even better.
It creates this virtuous cycle. It helps them spot threats early, find the best partners, strengthen their position. Meanwhile, incumbents often fall into these traps.
Like what?
Like assuming their market share is safe, or that their profitable little niche is defensible forever, or thinking they can win just by being slightly better than their old rivals, instead of really focusing on creating a winning digital model.
The article compares this to old industry shakeouts, like cars or PCs, where lots of companies disappeared.
Yeah, it draws that parallel, but the crucial difference now is speed. These digital disruptions are happening way faster and much more frequently.
Which leads to the third economic point.
Exactly. The third economic reality. Digital rewards first movers and some super fast followers.
So that old strategy of waiting, watching, letting someone else take the risks, then coming in and doing it better.
That's largely failing now. The pace of change is just too fast.
And the article found proof of this.
Yeah, the revenue growth for the fastest movers was nearly double that of companies reacting at just an average speed.
Double. Why such a big advantage?
Well, first movers and these really fast followers, they get a critical learning advantage. They're constantly testing, putting out early versions, MVPs.
Minimum viable product.
Right, refining things in real time.
Yeah.
It massively shortens development cycles. They also build out their platforms and their AI-powered networks much quicker. So often they're already launching version 3.0 or 4.0.
While the slow ones are still working on 1.0.
Pretty much. Plus, the early movers tend to embed this digital thinking across the whole business, and they benefit from that initial buzz, early adopter loyalty, word of mouth.
The Tesla example really drives this home.
It does.
The article mentions established car companies could have bought Tesla just a few years ago for maybe $4 billion.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
A missed opportunity.
And now they've collectively spent over $20 billion just trying to catch up on electric vehicles.
A very, very expensive lesson in the cost of waiting too long.
Wow, okay. So understanding these new economics is vital, but the third pitfall takes us even broader, you said.
Exactly. So pitfall number 3 is overlooking ecosystems.
Overlooking ecosystems. What does that mean exactly?
This is all about how strategies develop just within your own little traditional industry box. Well, they're becoming increasingly inadequate, increasingly risky.
Because the lines are blurring.
Massively. The old way, just tracking your direct competitors, optimizing your own value chain, it's just not enough anymore. As the article puts it, industries will soon be ecosystems. Digital platforms are smudging or even erasing those traditional boundaries.
So companies need to move faster.
At an unprecedented speed. Look at BMW. They shifted from updating cars once a year to making continuous improvements all year round. Why? To integrate digital advances faster.
Makes sense.
Or Qantas Airways launching their lower fare brand, Jetstar. They used digital tech heavily, and they were willing to basically compete with themselves with their main Qantas brand.
Cannibalize their own business. That's bold.
Very bold. But it worked. Jetstar actually ended up with higher profit margins because it disrupted the market effectively.
So these platforms create whole new competitive arenas?
Totally new landscapes. U.S. grocery stores, they can't just worry about Kroger or Safeway anymore. They have to consider Amazon. Banks aren't just competing with other banks. They're up against Apple Pay, Google Pay, these platform banks. And look at China giants like Tencent, Alibaba. They're building these vast ecosystems.
Spanning multiple industries.
Insurance, healthcare, entertainment, finance, retail. You name it, connecting hundreds of millions of customers across all these different areas.
It sounds like these ecosystems can do things that traditional businesses couldn't, like offer seemingly contradictory benefits.
Absolutely. That's a key point. The article asks, can you imagine a competitor offering the biggest selection and the fastest delivery and the best customer experience and the lowest cost all at once?
Traditionally, you'd say no, you have to make trade-offs.
Exactly. But digital platforms and ecosystems, they're smashing those limitations. Companies with massive scale can reach huge audiences, use AI for amazing service, leverage super efficient supply chains.
Like Facebook being a huge media player without creating content, or Uber and Airbnb dominating without owning cars or hotels.
Perfect examples, they orchestrate the ecosystem.
And the future scale of this, it's enormous.
Huge. The article project's ecosystems could account for over $60 trillion in revenue by 2025.
60 trillion.
That's potentially over 30% of all global corporate revenue.
So CEOs need a much wider view.
A much broader strategic lens, yes. They need to think about a far wider range of potential competitors, but also potential partners, because today's rival might be tomorrow's crucial ally in the ecosystem.
And if you don't?
You miss huge opportunities and you underestimate serious threats. Even if your business is mostly physical, these digital platforms are rewiring how markets work, forcing adaptation.
And the proof is in the pudding, right? The biggest companies are ecosystem players.
Yep. The article notes that 7 of the top 12 largest companies globally by market cap are ecosystem players. Alibaba, Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Tencent.
Yet disturbingly.
Yes. What's concerning is how few established companies are playing this game offensively. Only about 3% have adopted a proactive platform strategy.
That's tiny.
It is, though some are doing it well. Intuit is a good example. They saw the threat from fintech startups.
So they started buying them.
Exactly. They acquired digital assets, like Mint, to grow beyond their core QuickBooks and TurboTax products. They built an ecosystem, integrated everything with a single login, even let banks plug customer accounts right in. Very smart.
Okay, so pitfall 3. Don't get stuck in your industry silo. Think ecosystems. What's pitfall number 4?
The fourth pitfall is what the article calls over-indexing on the usual suspects, meaning focusing too much attention and worry on the flashy digital natives, the startups.
Right, the disruptors everyone talks about.
Exactly. While potentially overlooking two other major forces, the power of digitizing incumbents and the huge opportunity in the B2B space.
Ah, okay, so it's not just the new kids on the block we should watch.
Definitely not. The article argues that established players, the incumbents, if they successfully digitize, can be incredibly dangerous competitors.
Why is that?
Well, they have the potential to disrupt themselves, leverage their existing scale, brand, customer base, and really shake up the competitive landscape, especially in regulated sectors like finance or insurance, when a big established player there really commits to aggressive digitization.
They could be a turning point for the whole industry.
Absolutely, because they already have the market share, the brand recognition. The research backs this up too.
What did it find?
Incumbents who make these bold digital moves, they actually capture a much bigger slice of the newly digitizing markets, around 20%,
Compared to the digital natives.
who only get about 5%. So these revved up incumbents can pose just as much, if not more, risk to traditional players as the new digital attackers. Often, it's their move that pushes an industry past the tipping point, leaving the slow movers really exposed.
Is there an example of this?
Telefonica is a good one. The big telecom incumbent. They launched giffgaff, which was like a brownfield startup online first support lean operations.
But they use Telefonica's network.
Exactly. They leveraged their existing O2 digital network for the infrastructure and tech capabilities. It let them compete head-on with lower-cost digital rivals while still using their incumbent strengths.
Smart. Okay, so watch the incumbents. What about the other part, the B2B opportunity?
Yes, the business-to-business side of things, it's often less glamorous, gets less press than B2C.
But it's just as important.
Equally transformative, yes. In fact, the article points out something interesting. More B2B companies have actually digitized their core offerings and operations in the last 3 years than B2C players.
Really? Why do you think that is?
Well, the potential gains in efficiency, reach, and quality are just massive. Think about the Internet of Things, IoT, and advanced analytics for predictive maintenance and manufacturing.
Saving huge amounts on repairs and downtime.
Exactly. Or robotic process automation, RPA, streamlining massive back-office tasks, sometimes automating 50–80% of them in certain industries. Then there's AI and augmented reality boosting manufacturing yields and quality control. Even blockchain is starting to make inroads in complex B2B areas, like verifying transactions in smart grids or financial trading.
So these B2B shifts are happening everywhere. Maybe just under the radar sometimes.
Very much so. And they represent both huge inspiration for what's possible and a significant threat if your competitors are digitizing their B2B operations faster than you are.
Okay, so pitfall 4. Don't just fixate on startups. Pay close attention to digitizing incumbents and the massive shifts in B2B. That brings us to the final pitfall, number 5.
Yes, the fifth pitfall is missing the duality of digital.
Duality, meaning two sides.
Exactly. The most common reaction when companies feel the heat of digital disruption is often, okay, quick, we need to build something totally new, a new app, a new division, a new venture.
Right, focus on innovation.
And innovation is absolutely critical. But the article stresses that for most established companies, disruption doesn't happen overnight across the entire business. It's often uneven. Some parts are hit hard and fast, others slower.
So you can't just abandon the existing business.
You really can't afford to in most cases. It's not an either choice. You need a dual approach.
Okay, what's the duality?
You need to be aggressively digitizing your current business, transforming the core, while simultaneously innovating entirely new business model.
Both at the same time.
Exactly. Because transforming that core, digitizing existing operations, that leads to lower costs, much better customer satisfaction, and think getting a mortgage approved in hours, not weeks.
Which plays to the strength incumbents already have.
Precisely. It amplifies their advantages in people, brand, existing customers, scale.
But it seems like companies often struggle with this balance, right? Between the big game-changing bets and the hard work of remaking the place, fixing the core.
It's a huge challenge, and the article makes this critical point. In the digital age, strategy and execution can't be sequential anymore. You can't perfect the strategy, then execute. You have to tackle them simultaneously, iteratively, learn and adapt as you go.
That must have huge implications for the organization itself.
Profound implications, starting with people. The article estimates that maybe half of current full-time tasks could become obsolete eventually.
Half. That's staggering.
It is. Companies desperately need new skills analytics, design thinking, technology expertise, and new roles are emerging: digital product owners, agile coaches, implementation guides.
And then there's the big structural question.
Yeah.
How do you organize for this duality? Do you keep the teams digitizing the core separate from the teams doing radical innovation?
That's a central question. The article actually includes a useful framework, sort of a matrix, showing how companies might calibrate their response based on how fast and how deep the digital disruption is in their specific sector.
So the answer depends on the context.
It does. It ranges from taking really bold, transformative steps if you're facing massive, rapid change, all the way to making more cautious, low-risk moves if the impact is less immediate. But regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, there are two broad principles for getting the balance right.
Okay, what are they?
The first is bold aspiration. Because of those winner-takes-all dynamics we talked about and the first-mover advantage, well, incremental change often isn't enough.
You need to aim high.
You need significant investments, maybe fundamental changes to your business model. The article calls out digital reinventors, companies that invest heavily in tech, make digital acquisitions, really innovate their models aggressively, and guess what? They perform better.
Boldness pays off. What's the second principle?
The second is being highly adaptive. You need agility. You need to be willing and able to pivot quickly when things change, when assumptions prove wrong.
Embrace the fail-fast mentality.
Exactly. Fail fast, fail often, learn, iterate. It means relying more on pilots, on minimum viable products, rather than getting bogged down in overly theoretical long-term plans that might be obsolete before they're even approved.
That sounds like a cultural shift, too.
It absolutely is. It means overcoming those ingrained operational silos, that resistance to risk-taking. It requires a kind of contextual awareness to see when the market is about to break, when the rules are changing.
So, putting it all together,
Yeah.
it seems like lots of executives feel the urgency, they know they need to do something about digital,
There's a lot of talk.
but they often lack the specificity. They might launch vague initiatives like moving to the cloud
Right. Which is important, but it's not a strategy in itself.
without really confronting these deeper issues head on. The need to become number one fast by creating real customer value, the need to redefine their role in these new ecosystems, the need to fundamentally improve the existing business while also innovating.
Exactly. Recognizing these specific disconnects, the 5 pitfalls we've walked through, that's the essential first step. It's about moving beyond the buzzwords to develop a digital strategy that actually grapples with these new realities and has a real chance of success.
Okay, so to quickly recap for everyone listening, a real digital strategy isn't just about tech. It demands, 1, a clear definition of digital. 2, understanding the tough new economics, rent erosion, winner takes all. 3, seeing the bigger picture of ecosystems. 4, looking beyond just startups to incumbents and B2B. And 5, mastering that duality, transforming the core and innovating for the future.
You got it. And that brings us to maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Given everything we've discussed, these rapid fundamental shifts,
Right.
what's the single biggest assumption your organization is making right now about the future of your industry?
An assumption that might be completely upended by these digital forces.
Exactly. It's definitely worth revisiting your own strategies, your own assumptions in light of these pitfalls.
Some serious food for thought there. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. We really hope it's provided you with some valuable, actionable insights.